Hey everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood therapist Alfonso over here at Mental Matters, and hope that you all are already having an amazing day on purpose. Guys, I want to bring something to your attention, something I actually thought about today on my way into the office. We are living in times where we are just seeing, I don't want to say it's the worst of times at my age, at 59 years old on Wednesday. I've seen a lot worse than this, but I'm the first to acknowledge that these times can be very overwhelming for individuals, whether you have a psychiatric disorder or not. These are times, as the old gospel song says, these are the times that try men's souls. We're living in a time where we're seeing mass layoffs. We're seeing people lose their homes. We're seeing people lose their jobs and their ability to pay for their kids' college and their lifestyle going down. These are very serious times. And during these times, there are two psychiatric disorders that tend to be more pronounced. That is anxiety and that is depression. Now, I want to explain the two of you and help you to explain both of them to you, and also help you understand how they can be freestanding and also feed off of each other. Let's take the most common of all psychiatric disorders first. Let's take anxiety first. Anxiety is the #1 psychiatric disorder in the country. At some point in time, most of us are going to experience symptoms of anxiety. And I do want to make sure I help you to understand having symptoms of a disorder does not mean that you have the disorder. But Mr. Lewis, what is anxiety? Alfonso, what is it? Explain this to me. Anxiety, the way I look at it, or the way I describe it to my folk in lay language, is not being able to shut your brain off and not being able to stop worrying. Now, there's a difference between your thoughts always going. Some people with anxiety tend to be very prolific in their creativity. I'm talking about not being able to shut your brain off in terms of not being able to stop worrying about things. Individuals with anxiety, if you ask them, they'll tell you from the time they wake up in the morning, their brain goes from 0 to 100, just like that. Individuals with anxiety, this is why they also have a difficult time sleeping, because if in fact they wake up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, most people will kind of go right back to sleep. But with anxiety, when you get up, boom, that brain is already going, and it is going 1,000, a million miles a minute. Individuals with anxiety can't shut their brains off. They're always worried about the next thing happening, which is going to be the worst thing that's happening. For example, let's say an individual with anxiety, now this may be far-fetched, but believe me, it happens. Let's say they cut themselves and they can't just put a Band-Aid on it for that cut to stop bleeding. It's not uncommon for an individual with anxiety to take that cut to think about how now it's going to get infected. They're going to have their hand amputated, then maybe their arm, and ultimately lose their lives. This is what it's like for somebody with anxiety who worries about things without the ability to shut their brain off. And these particular times, especially with folk losing their jobs and things like that, I treat people who are literally sitting on millions of dollars, tons of education, but because they lost their job, that doesn't mean that something can't happen, but they take no comfort in the fact that they're sitting on millions of dollars. They take no comfort in the fact that they have the highest education. They can look at losing their job as being the beginning, the building block of them now losing everything. And one of the worst things you can do with somebody with anxiety is to tell them, don't worry about it, or to point out the resources that they have, because their brains don't operate that way. The second disorder I want to talk about is the second most prevalent disorder in the country, that is depression. And when we look at depression, remember, once again, a person can have the symptoms of a disorder but not have the actual disorder. When we diagnose depression, we look for people who feel sad, feel helpless, hopeless, worthless, overwhelmed, demoralized, a desire to isolate, not feeling good about anything, even when they're around positivity. They can question their own value. Sometimes they can have a desire not to want to live, and they can just have a desire to actually kill themselves. Now, anxiety and depression, they're on a spectrum. The depression can be as mild as what we call dysthymic disorder or persistent depressive disorder, all the way over to a melancholic depression, a major depression where someone endorses or thinks about committing suicide on a regular basis. Now, I'm bringing these two to you today because These two disorders can be freestanding or they can actually cause each other. Now, the difference is, let's look at it this way. An individual who, let's say, has generalized anxiety disorder, they worry about things on a regular basis. That's what we call their baseline. As a result of constantly worrying, their brains are constantly going, their sleep is poor, they're not able to be in the moment. As a result of that, it can culminate in them feeling depressed. But when that anxiety is causing a depressed episode, the individual typically does not stay in that depressed episode. Conversely, somebody who has depression, where they're constantly thinking about death, constantly questioning their value, their worth, they can actually have a moment or moments where they start to feel anxious and start to constantly ruminate on how things have never worked out for them, how things will never work out for them. But the anxiety symptoms will, what we call, ameliorate once again. They'll go down. They will be assuaged at some point. Now, an individual can actually have both at the exact same time. It's not uncommon to see that. But just because an individual has anxiety or depression, it doesn't mean that they're going to also have the other, but they may have episodes of the other. We are in that period of time where we're going into the holiday season. That's Thanksgiving through New Year's. And it's common for individuals who have no psychiatric disorders to also suffer from what's called SAD, seasonal affective disorder. A person with anxiety who's not prone to be depressed can actually have a depressed episode, a prolonged or what we call protracted depressed episode, purely because we're in that season, that holiday season. So these times in which we find ourselves living now, just want to encourage you to be careful to remember, do your homework. This is not the worst that it's been. Yeah, I know that it's like you have to take one side or the other. And yeah, we're not saying that it's not bad. We're not saying that there's not cause for concern. But what we have to do is make sure we're feeding ourselves some positive information. I tell my people, learn to be in the moment. If you've lost your job, or if you think that you may lose your job, appreciate the little things. Appreciate being able to go out and to move. Appreciate being able to still think and feel, and anything that can actually bring something positive to you. Try to think about those things. What I do, I've actually not been feeling that great emotionally myself. I just lost my dog, and we had to have her put down, and it's been a bit overwhelming for me. What I do is make sure I stay away from watching anything pertaining to the news, because it's sensationalized. And it is designed to to keep us informed. But if you look at any newscast, it's going to start off with the worst, and then it'll end with a kind story or something like that. You have to be your own news producer. You have to make sure that you are governing yourself so that you're not constantly inundating yourself with such bad news. I tell my folk all the time, if you don't own this, this will own you. When I say own this, I mean give yourself permission to have a day or a moment where you're not feeling okay, but then make sure you are doing something to put yourself in a better frame of mind. I promise you, just like as I said before, I'm just a student of history. In fact, I was going to go to school to be a history teacher. These are not the worst of times, but they are worse than they have been recently. You can do something about this. Make sure you're being aware of what's going on in your mind and your body, and on purpose, do something to bring a smile to your face. Hey guys, you know what I love to tell you. I really do love you. Not only do I love you, I also like you. If at all possible today, do something to help make somebody else's life better. I promise you, there's no better feeling in life than the feeling of helping somebody who can't help you in return. Last thing I'm going to ask you guys to do is today, on purpose, reject hate, embrace love. Don't ever subscribe to a platform that tells you that you have to hate one another. We are all God's creation. He loves us all, and because He loves us, that means we all have value. You guys have an amazing day. Love you.